Going to call the Monday, April 28th, 2025 regular meeting of the Jersey Shore Area School District Board of School Directors to order. Can I have a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen.
Present.
Mr. Brungard. Here. Calhoun.
Here.
Ms. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mrs. Peters.
Here.
Mr. Furman.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Dunlap.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Thank you. Next, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Ulmer.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Jean.
Good evening, Board. It gives me great pleasure to introduce 2 students from Mavis Elementary School. And can I have Addison Downey and Easton Hively come up for the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
Next, we will have approval of the minutes. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the treasurer's report. May I have a motion, please?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or concerns, Mr. Enders?
Just want to point it out to the board that we did do another last month. We did have 2 maturities. Last month, we netted just over $44,000 of interest. We netted a CD, or purchased a new CD on March the 21st. We're starting, won't say a new strategy, but we're expanding on our strategy. We're $500,000 one-year CD to lock the interest rate in for 1 year. We're also taking advantage of the higher short-term interest rate, 3-month CDs, because our cash flow is good enough, we can get ourselves to through the end of the year with our current cash flow. So we did a 3-month CD, we did a 12-month CD at the very, very beginning of April, and then just as of today, we did the same exact thing. We did a 3-month and a 12-month. The Trinity Bank, 4.5% for the 3-month, 4.25% for the 12 months. So we're getting kind of the best of both worlds right now, getting a higher interest rate on short term, locking in a rate for long-term terminology.
Thank you, Mr. Enders. Any questions for Mr. Enders? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the bills. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Mr. Enders?
So there were a couple of bills, the bills are slightly higher than typical months. They are on par with the normal quarter end. Sugar Valley Rural Charter bill for February was $97,404.50. As I just mentioned, we did a $500,000 CD securing bank, which requires us to put a check. So that's in this check listing. And then what increased it above the normal monthly amount, but is in line with the quarter, is our Peters quarterly employer payment was paid of $1,702,108.61. That's the big anomaly.
Any questions for Mr. Enders? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Under communications, Dr. Ulmer.
I have nothing for communications this evening.
Okay, under the president's report, we had an executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss safety and personnel. I also, at this time, wanted to make 2 corrections on tonight's agenda under finance. Under letter A, I can get to it. Okay. The agreement with Sapphire Student Information System software, we just wanted to add that it's with the implementation occurring in the 2025-26 school year. And then under finance for letter B, we wanted to take off the words "for referendum exceptions." All right. Having said that, next will be board representative committee reports. Jesse, do you have an IU report for this evening?
Yeah, there, I passed a copy to everybody from our meeting from last week. The online learning symposium was on March 26, 2025. The Division of Education Planning hosted the inaugural 2025 online learning symposium at Appalachia IU 8. It was a day-long virtual event, and it was a learning experience for all of them. And it basically, it was connecting other IUs with our IU, and for a day learning and sharing how they teach. So that is all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brungard, do you have any committee report?
No, nothing special except maybe just to say that Site Logic is looking at phase 2 recommendations. We'll be bringing back their report, I would assume, within a week or 2, so we can go further.
All right, thank you. Student representative report, Kate.
I have a list of updates that are happening within the high school. So Mu Alpha Theta Honor Society had Pi Day at JSASD. The high school students helped the kindergartners and 5th graders with activities. The Remembrance Garden for Max is coming along well. Make sure to stop by and see that. And for FBLA, the FBLA club went to the 74th annual FBLA state competition in Hershey, PA. Over 6,000 students and advisors were there. We took 22 students to compete in different events like accounting, business law, job interview, and business ethics. Camden Stell Fox got 2nd place in the state for Introduction to Information Technology, and will go to nationals this summer in Anaheim, California. For band, 17 students were part of the County Honors Band Festival at Jersey Shore. 2 students made it into the PMEA District 8 Modern Band Festival. 3 students got into the PMEA District 8 Band Festival. 1 student made it into the PMEA Region 4 Band Festival. 1 student made it into the PMEA District 8 Jazz Festival. The indoor color guard is undefeated this season. The jazz band played at the Lycoming College Jazz Festival. Both color guard and jazz band will go to the Atlantic Coast Championships in Wildwood, New Jersey in May. The Modern Band Showcase will be on May 16th at 6 p.m. The 100th anniversary band concert will be May 17th at 7 p.m. Jazz band will perform at Knoebels on May 18th. Marching and concert bands will play at Memorial Day events on May 26th. The Pops concert will be May 29th at 7 p.m. The high school and 7th through 8th concert bands will go to Music in the Parks at Hershey Park on May 30th. For National English Honor Society, they visited local elementary schools during Read Across America Week, and they made lessons about reading, science, and STEAM. The National Honor Society volunteered at Jersey Shore Share and Care and donated hygiene items and money to the YWCA Women and Children's Center. In Skills USA, Savannah Kramer won first place at districts in child care demonstration. Alexander Bush won first place at districts in automotive service technology. Ocean Green, Sophie Wilds, and Marissa Franz got second place at states for a stuffed animal drive to help local hospitals. Maggie Johnson got second place at districts in early childhood education, and Landon Knife got second place at districts in precision machining. For sports, several swimmers made it to states in the 200 medley relay. Kate Butzler, Reese Charney, Erilyn Kimball, and Brooke Charney. Reese and Kate also qualified individually. Girls basketball won the league and made it to states for the 3rd year in a row, and Peyton Dincher broke the school record for career points with 2,029 points. Boys basketball had a winning season and made it to districts for the first time since 2020. Wrestling had 3 district champions, Tobias Morgret, Loudon Spots, and Addison Dangle. Bocce teams qualified for league and regional championships. Baseball and softball are doing well, even with the bad weather. Boys tennis is 8-1 and close to making districts. For Renaissance Club, they're hosting a day, which is a school-wide fun day where students are rewarded for working hard all year. With Outdoor Club, the Outdoor Club helped stock trout at Little Pine with the Fish and Boat Commission. For Bible Club, they held a car wash to help Mountain View Church on May 21st. The Bible Club and Middle School C3 Club will go to Lancaster to see Noah at Sight and Sound Theater and eat at Miller's Smorgasbord. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sounds like the kids are doing quite busy, very successful. So thank you for that report. All right, next we will have the superintendent's report. Dr. Ulmer.
I'm going to start by recognizing Laura Soder and Lucy Kesey from CKLA Amplify, who are with us here tonight virtually to review their English language arts curriculum.
All right, hi everyone, can you hear me?
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name's Laura Soder. I live outside of Pittsburgh and I've been working with Jersey Shore Area School District probably a little bit over a year now on their literacy journey, making the shift to structured literacy. I am a former CKLA teacher myself, instructional coach and building level principal, and made the jump to work with Amplify a couple of years ago. I'm working with districts across Pennsylvania, make that shift to structured literacy. Lucy Kesey is going to walk us through a presentation. It'll be about 10 or 15 minutes, a high-level overview of CKLA's 3rd edition, and then we'll leave time for questions at the end.
Hi everyone, 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen here. And Laura, can you see our presentation? I see it's loading. Does it go up there now?
Yep. You look like you're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to share CKLA with you and happy to answer any questions that you may have. But it's just really nice to start from the beginning with, CPLA is just really built on the science of reading. It always has been. There are numerous reports you can look at to see, like Ed Reports or Knowledge Matters campaign, and just to see the success we're finding with schools not only within Pennsylvania, but all across the country. We know that here in Pennsylvania, there's a big push towards structured literacy and the science of reading, and that is what CPLA is built on and has always been built on. So we always like to start there just to kind of level everything, think about what is the science of reading, and the Reading League provides a really nice definition of that, which saying it is truly a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. The research has been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world and derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. The science of reading has culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. So really when we think about it, the science of reading is truly just research that has been conducted over a very long time. Now, when you think of that long definition, there's some things we can really pull out of that. And one of the things from research I like to discuss is that we, people, are born with some innate abilities, while other abilities require explicit instruction and deliberate practice, and that is reading, right? And then also that skilled reading requires 2 essential components, word recognition and language comprehension. So we're gonna look at those 2 and how CKLA addresses those. The first one being that we just actually need to explicitly teach kids how to read and practice that because it is not a natural process. When you think about the work of learning to read, it is actually quite difficult. So in our language, there are 150 different spellings for the 44 sounds in our English language, which is a lot. But when you compare it to other languages, maybe like Finnish, that is a 1-to-1. So when you think about that comparison, you think about just truly that work of just learning to read is so difficult. The other piece of research we want to look at is that skilled reading, proficient readers, requires 2 things, right? Word recognition and language comprehension. We want kids to be able to read the words on the page, but also make meaning and understand those. So that is known as the simple view of reading. And when you expand upon that, you have here the reading rope by Dr. Scarborough. So you can see they expand on all of those. And this is how CKLA is designed. So in grades K through 2, there are 2 parts of that. One would be what we refer to as our knowledge strand, and that aligns to the language comprehension piece of that reading rope. The other piece is what we refer to as our skill strand, and that aligns to the word recognition piece of the rope. So we actually separate these 2. They're 2 different time blocks because our younger students are doing so much. We're trying to prevent that cognitive overload. Now, grades 3, 4, and 5, they have what we call one integrated strand. Now, it's important to note that when using CKLA, it is a truly comprehensive program. This is so wonderful for our teachers because it is one place they're going to get everything that they need for language arts. Now we're going to take a look at, and how this addresses it, starting with that word recognition, which is what we refer to that skill strand. Now in our skill strand, it feels like phonics, but there is so much more that's going on. Our students are really working on phonological and phonemic awareness. They actually have their handwriting, which is connected to the sounds that they're learning. They're decoding and encoding. They're even working on grammar and fluency, comprehension, of course, in that process of learning how to write. Now, with CKLA, they start with a true sounds first approach. So students are listening to the sound, they're practicing the sound, and then attaching letters to that sound. This is where you can see that our handwriting is connected. So you don't even need a separate handwriting program. If we're learning the sound spelled ER, that's the handwriting that kids are practicing. The same with the spelling list. The spelling is connected to the pieces of the code that they are learning. That fluency practice comes in many different ways, whether it's fluency passages or their readers, and these readers have so much to them that they're actually working on comprehension, and again, that process of learning to write. Now, I mentioned our readers, and you're going to see several of those pop up on the screen here. In grades K through 2, they use 100% decodable readers, meaning that kids are reading everything that has been taught to them. Nothing new is in these books. Everything has been explicitly taught in practice, and that just gives our kids so much confidence and success. And these are so engaging. They're all set up as chapter books, and when you hand those kindergartners a chapter book that they can read, it is so, so exciting for them. Now we're going to go to the other piece of the rope there, that language comprehension piece. So this is the other part of K through 2. Now, before we get into it, I want to show a little bit of research on the screen here by T.G. Stick. What you're looking at in orange are listening comprehension abilities, and in gray, reading comprehension abilities. The numbers down at the bottom, if you can see them, those are ages of students. So what this is showing us is that listening comprehension and reading comprehension, they don't actually equal out until age 13. So what this tells us that our kids in elementary school, especially in grades K through 2, are actually capable of comprehending at a much higher level than what they are able to read at. This is what happens in knowledge strands. This is those speaking and listening standards that are so, so important and crucial to reading comprehension. So our students are going to be listening to really complex, higher level text and discussing them here. Now, what you're going to see is that there's a really intentional knowledge sequence where kids are growing week from week, right? They're building on things that they have learned through the year, but also over time. So they're building on things through the years. So if we're looking at our topics, and I know those are really, really tiny words and probably hard to see, but what I want to highlight to you is what happens over time through the years. So our kids are engaged in different science topics in the ELA block, and you can see how they build on each other over time. The same thing with social studies. So again, our ELA block, they are just engaged in all of these different social studies topics where they are diving deeper and deeper year after year. Now within CKLA, they have 2 units where you all, Jersey Shore, as a district, can make a choice of which unit would work best for you and your community. What this does is this allows to keep that intentional knowledge sequence, but then also make some decisions that aligns best with your goals and your community's needs. Now, Laura can provide lots of help and support when it comes to making that choice. But when we think about the end of the year, our students within CKLA have a culminating research unit. So what happens here at the end of the year, they're working on research skills throughout the year, and they end with this unit where they're diving into a really interesting topic, they're engaging in more authentic text, and then they are researching, they are planning, drafting, and then presenting their research paper. Now, this knowledge strand has so much going on more than just speaking and listening and building background knowledge. You're going to see that they are really engaged in a lot of vocabulary and writing, a lot of writing connected to these interesting topics. So this is an interactive read aloud lesson, meaning our kids are looking at these images. This comes from kindergarten, and it's a geography unit, and the teacher is reading aloud to them. And what this does is this allows these younger students to listen, discuss, use higher level vocabulary, and practice that speaking and listening so that when they are able to decode all of those words and read all those words, they're going to be able to work on the comprehension and the writing as well. Now, lastly, we need to think about our students in grades 3 through 5, where we're really, honing in on all of those skills as a skilled reader. Now, we mentioned earlier, this is a comprehensive approach. You can see by looking at the integrated strand how many things are happening. And not only is it, comprehensive, but it's really cohesive. Things are connected. So, of course, they're writing about what they're reading about, and the vocabulary is connected, and the morphology, the spelling, and the grammar, they all go together as well. Now, you may have looked at our topics and thought, like, where are these topics coming from? This graphic here is kind of showing you that. Those really, really tiny white words are showing you 89 passage topics on the top 10 content categories on standardized assessments. Now, this work was done by the Core Knowledge Foundation over a number of years, numerous researchers and educators. So you're going to see a lot of things in common with this list and then also the CKLA topics. Now, Daniel Willingham, one of the researchers that worked on this, said, of course our kids need to pass an assessment, but really, we as citizens should know a little bit about a lot of different things, and that is what CKLA does. Our units are designed at about 3 weeks per topic. So that allows our students enough time to dive deep, gain some comprehension and curiosity around these topics without staying too long and getting too bored. One of the units in grades 3, 4, 5, actually one of those choice units is actually a novel study. You can see here the grade levels and then your novel choice. And it's important to think about when you're making these choices, it is a district level choice, but you get to think about what would our kids need best and what would work best for us, which novel. These are designed just like the other units. So it is the same pacing. Students will actually receive the novel, that's the reader for that text. They hold it in their hands, and as they are learning, they are connecting that writing to it as well. Just like grades K through 2, grades 3 through 5 also end the year with a culminating research unit. Of course, working on those research skills throughout the year, but here they are engaging in different topics, more authentic text, and continuing that research, plan, draft, publish, and present their research as well. Now, Dr. Pam Kastner, who does amazing work within Pennsylvania, she says that we don't isolate, integrate. Now, of course, we're all looking for that magic bullet to ensure literacy for all kids, but there is none. She says learning to read requires integration of all of the language systems. And then it should be taught directly and systematically and aligned throughout the intentional sequence. This is what CKLA does really, really well. So what our kids are doing is that they are being exposed to all of these things and spiraling all throughout the year. Just to kind of show how that works, when we look at some really cool things in 5th grade, their 5th grade unit here, if we take one of the things that they work on, like compare and contrast, what they do here is in their unit 2, they dive deep into comparing and contrasting Maya, Aztec, and Incas, and they end the year with a compare and contrast writing piece. So they have to know how to compare and contrast, right? So they actually start that in unit 1 in some of those lessons. They are actually explicitly taught it in unit 2 all throughout, and it keeps spiraling all throughout. It comes back up in lesson 7 and lesson 9 and lesson 10 and lesson 12, and then they end that unit with this writing piece. But it does not end in unit 2. Kids are continuing to work on this compare and contrast in their poetry unit, in their Don Quixote unit, in their Native Americans unit, and even in that novel choice. So you can see they are being exposed to this year after year. Everything is integrated. Thinking about connecting the writing, we have to go back to that simple view of reading that we started with, right? We need those both things. But when you think about the simple view of writing, they actually have to have 2 things also to be a skilled writer. Kids need to have composition skills. and they need transcription skills to be a skilled writer. So when we think about those composition skills, we're thinking like they need something to write about, they need the structure, they need knowledge, they need really good word choice, but they actually just have to know how to write also, which is handwriting, spelling, grammar, all of those things. So you're gonna see that a lot of this simple view of writing approach within CKLA. You'll see that kids are being exposed to the different genres of writing all throughout the year and over time as well. And we can follow up with some documents if you want to dive into these and study this a bit more. But what you'll see is that they've added writing really everywhere. So in the younger grades, that writing can sometimes look at working at that oral language, right? So before we be able to write it, we have to speak it. Now, when we move up in our grades, we're thinking about things like combining sentences. This is a really tough thing for students to do. So it's explicitly taught, but practiced all throughout in different parts of the program, not just the writing program. And same thing with sentence expansion, really expanding upon that sentence. In that sentence, talking about the what, the where, the why. So these are really hard things for kids, and you're gonna see this all throughout CKLA. Now, on our digital platform, of course, teachers and students will have all of the wonderful things in their classroom, like books and teacher guides and activity books, but teachers will have teacher presentation screens for every single lesson they teach. This comes with the program, so teachers don't need to go outside of it to create it or to purchase it from somewhere else. It also really helps with consistency within the district. You're going to see that students will have access to our sound library, one more way to listen to that sound and practice it in a really fun way. Our students will be holding the books in their hands within the classroom, but they will also have access to them digitally as an e-reader, and this e-reader is actually also an audiobook as well. Now, as far as that home connection, there are so many things that we want to be able to connect with caregivers at home. There is a fantastic website, but it's important to know that each unit within CKLA has letters to the family. Hey family, this is what we're working on. Here are some words you can practice. Here are some things that you can read at home to work on that fluency. Or here are some questions you can ask to really speak with them and talk with them about what's going on in their classroom. I am a proud CKLA parent, and I love when these come home because now I know, just a different question to ask, like, how was your day? What did you learn? It could be really more specific. I'm going to have Laura just kind of talk about the professional development really quickly that we like to partner with you with, and then we will take any questions.
Yes, so we are big believers in this is not just a transaction, this is the beginning of a partnership. And with that partnership is ongoing professional development. So we will come on site and fully train your teachers, initial full day of training to make sure that they're prepped and ready to go at the beginning of the school year. We also offer coaching sessions, strengthening sessions to make sure that the teachers are supported throughout their CKLA journey. Not just goodbye, good luck, see you later, but like a true partnership. So if teachers have questions or what does this look like, can you refresh my mind on how to find this? We're able to provide that for you guys. All right, is there anything that we can do or any questions you guys have?
Questions from the board?
I did not hear what you said your initial training was. Just a one-day training?
Yeah, so the initial training is hours, so 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. Teachers all kind of see both strands of CKLA K2, 3-5 the integrated, and we'll split teachers too. So they'll be in K2 bands or in a 3-5 band, and then the afternoon they come back together and begin planning out their first unit.
If you had to identify one weakness, what would it be?
Probably just change. Like, so, and I can talk from my experience. Before CKLA, I had like a program for reading and a program for writing and a program for handwriting and a program for spelling, program for vocabulary. So it was kind of disjointed, but learning CKLA was comprehensive. It was kind of like a one-stop shop. So at first it seemed overwhelming because it was different than the first 10 years of my teaching career. But once I got settled into my routine, and I kind of appreciated just a one-stop shop, and that my reading, like we were reading what we were writing about, we were writing what we were reading about. The spelling words were found right in the story. So I appreciated the comprehensiveness. And that's also what research shows we should be doing.
I have a question. Have you had any complaints that the material was too difficult for the grade level?
I think we hear that from some teachers for sure at the start, because it is a big lift. And I know, like, when I first started, 5th grade is where I was tasked with starting CKLA, and it was a big shift for sure. But we got a lot better just by building scaffolds, and there's differentiation strategies that are built right into the program that teachers and students feel like they can't access the program.
And I think, just to add on to that, really exposing our students to grade level tech the entire year. I think at times that can be a little bit shocking to teachers at first, but instead of bringing the level down, we're gonna just bring more scaffolds and supports within that, and then going back to that research of this is how we really grow kids, is exposing them and supporting them within grade level tech.
Okay. Do you see the students recover then that have found it difficult? Are they recovering and getting back onto grade level, or are they getting lost?
I think that was one of the best things about the program is like we saw gains in our student data that first year of implementation. Instead of meeting kids where they were and leveling down, like there's no research that shows that leveling text helps or closes gaps. In fact, the research shows that the best thing that you can do is expose students to on-grade level text, and that will catch them up more quickly.
Is there statistics to support that?
Yeah, we have a full website that I can send over to Brian and Laura to share with you of like our research and our efficacy data.
Who does the research?
There's different like case studies that districts will pull from. They'll submit their PSA data or their map data.
And there's a couple, you'll see a couple research pieces in there that we had nothing to do with. That would be the ESSA evidence, and one other, I forget the name of it, but we didn't even know the study was happening. So there's a variety of research to look at.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I can send that website over to you, Brian and Laura, tonight, that you can forward on.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. I was able to view some of the books, some of the materials. One of them was I think it was the 4th grade history. And after just, reading through it, my initial thought was, this seemed much more like a history course that you incorporated English into, versus it being strictly a language arts program. Have you been asked that before?
Yeah, no, that's a good, I felt like that very, very much too, because I was tasked with reading and social studies, and I was able to cover a lot of my social studies standards when I taught 5th grade with CKLA, which was really helpful because I just felt like I never had enough time. So there's going to be about like a third of our topics are literature-based, a third are science-based, and a third are social studies-based. And that's very intentional because we're trying to build the background knowledge at the same time as teaching them how to read and how to write.
And I think it's important to add on, because teachers can get concerned and lost in that, but to think about the goal for each lesson, as noted in the lesson objective, is always an ELA standard. And although it could feel like social studies or science, when we just break it down, we are still just teaching cause and effect, which is that ELA standard. It's just through that different lens.
And then it felt better too, because I remember, like, you know, when it comes to PSSAs, there would be topics on stalactites and stalagmites, or there would be a passage on the American Revolution. And so, like Lucy shared in her presentation, a lot of the topics have come from the Core Knowledge Foundation, and they are the topics that show up on a lot of the standardized tests that our students have to be able to read and write about. So that's kind of the thinking there.
And I can understand that, but one of the things I was considering is, even though it's labeled ELA and, you know, the language arts part of it, I noticed as I went through, it seemed like spelling and spelling lists weren't started immediately, at least in the 4th grade, because that's where I was looking initially. So I noticed it was about halfway through lesson 10, there were some, then it started to incorporate some spelling, and then it started to incorporate some writing. A lot of what I saw in the book right off the top was very challenging reading. So here's a couple questions. I gave you those things to ask a couple questions off of that. Number one is, what happens when students aren't at the level of reading that book on their own? Because I'm assuming that's the book that is handed to them. What do you do when students are not able to read at that level?
So that's a great question. And kind of going back to like the listening comprehension and how that doesn't catch up into students' reading comprehension until age 13, that's a great opportunity to help students access it, do read alouds. You can do small groups, you can do partner reads. So there's a lot of
The audiobook, the ebook.
There's an audiobook, the ebook. So the biggest thing that you want is to make sure that the students are like able to access that knowledge and through the read aloud. But if that means that you have to do it together in a small group or together whole group, that's perfectly fine too.
So is there actual spelling started right off the top every single day? I personally would like to know how much spelling, writing, reading is done by the student on an everyday basis. Because as I went through the book, it didn't present it that way.
So spelling's going to be introduced, like bi-weekly, Lucy, in grade 4?
So grades 4 and 5, there are 2 spelling assessments per unit. So they are explicitly introduced on whatever lesson that may be, and then they are practiced up until that assessment, that spelling test. It's hard to almost see it every day because everything is so connected and cohesive. So you may see some of the spelling in the language component under morphology. That's the purpose of the cohesiveness of it, but it is hard to identify like at just first glance.
And for K3, there will be spelling lists that are on a 5-day rotation.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is kind of moving away from memorizing lists, and we want students to actually like master the code and learn the code. So, and that will be on like a 5-day rotation for K3.
And what exactly is that, the code?
So they're learning like how to decode words and then blending them together. So if they learn like the sound, they're gonna have a list of 5 or 10 words that have the sound that follow that pattern. So we want kids to, like when they're spelling, to sound out the words, not just memorize a list, so that they're actually learning it and that learning is sticking with them.
Were there ever any concerns, at least for this 4th grade history curriculum that I'm calling it history, but one of my concerns is I noticed the spelling lists were they're not everyday vernacular that you and I would be using to write a letter, to talk to somebody. I mean, these were words like militia, these are history-related terminology. Hard to spell words. Not that students can't, but how are you going to incorporate all of those kinds of words in everyday communication? That's one of the things that I would like to know.
The spelling list in grades 4 and 5 are designed around a couple different things. One of them will be based on grammar. Some will be based on grammar, morphology, or content. So it's those three things that they're pulling from. Maybe it's suffixes, or maybe it's prefixes, or maybe some of those words are just connected to the content. Grade 3, the spelling is going to be based on either phonics, grammar, or morphology. And like Laura had mentioned, the grades 1 and 2 spelling is really just based on that code.
Okay, thank you.
When you are putting a curriculum like this in and you're doing it K to 5 and you're telling us there's the spiraling and the comprehensive and the background, how do you help, how do 4th and 5th graders start that, and how do they even finish all that they're supposed to do in a year when they have no background?
Yeah, sure. So we see implementations mainly based K-5. The way that it is designed is that in that teacher guide, that first unit, that introduction, it's explaining to teachers, like, here's some background. Lesson 1 is always setting the stage and that background information. But also it's the design within CKLA, so they know that, you know, everyone 5th grade maybe didn't have some of these things for the last couple of years. So you always have that option of adding in one of our flexible days. We call them our pausing point days if you see that need of setting more background. It's almost hard to just predict until you start getting into it, what that background looks like. So it's
The whole first unit is a review of the previous year. So all of unit 1 in grade 4 will review everything that was taught that has been before in 3rd grade. Same thing for 5th grade. The whole first unit is, so we say, like, it starts slow to go fast, and that is kind of level set at the beginning of the year. But after year 1, and once you get year 2, like, you'll see, I saw such a difference in my students that year 1 obviously is the biggest lift because it's brand new for them. But by year 2, year 3, it was just great to kind of see them grow from having years of CKLA before them.
Well, I'd agree with that, but we've lost some along the way. One of my biggest concerns, I thought the science was done well. One of my biggest concerns is basically the material that we're giving to our kids at the age we're giving it to our kids. I'm not saying it's too hard or not, or it's not necessarily above them, but I don't see that as material or things that should be given to elementary kids that are 5, 6, and 7 years old. They're students, their minds, they just absorb like a sponge, and we're giving them things from ancient culture, ancient civilizations, and Greek mythology, and this and that, and we're always talking about different gods, and their mind, I don't think that elementary kids should be, I'm not saying that your procedures are wrong. I think there's a lot more reading to the students, which I understand what you're trying to do. I don't have the research as to how that works or not. One of the things that I read, that there seems to be a lack of fluency reading with this series, and that just might be an opinion, but it was a research that I read.
I have a question coming as a parent. I do appreciate a challenge for my children. However, what is your experience from the kids' side? I know reading is a delicate issue for a lot of children, and it's kind of something that you have to develop and you have to learn to love. Do you see any pushback from the children as far as getting them engaged in the topics, in the context? I showed one of the science books to my will-be 5th grader next year, and she was like, the pictures are pretty, but I mean, she didn't really get why she would be learning science in English class, I guess. So I'm just kind of curious as to what, like, the student feedback is and how you are approaching that with the ever-changing family dynamic. Not every family has the opportunity to have their child sit down for 15 minutes a day and read. And it's hard enough to find a topic that they're interested in. So I was just kind of concerned about that sort of pathway that you see with the children.
Yeah, I can speak from this, and then I know, Lucy, you can talk about it, because your own daughter is a CKLA student at home. And I think that was probably my biggest aha moment, is that the way that CKLA teaches the topics, my students were so engaged in what we were covering, whether it was the War of 1812, and I was a history major, and I had to go back and kind of relearn the War of 1812, because it had been a minute before I had studied that. And then I know you had mentioned the Greeks, like they absolutely adored that unit. They felt like it was so neat. Have you ever met like a kid that can name all the presidents or knows all the dinosaurs and they can just rattle them off? I mean, that's kind of what we're tapping into. And I was able to see it like with every unit before my very eyes. I'm kind of like, I like the history and the social studies, like that's kind of what I like. Science ones that I didn't know how they were gonna go, but my students really surprised me each and every day. They would go home, they'd wanna ask grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever it was at their house, take them to the library to check out more books. They'd come in the next for learning. And I have teachers message me all the time with, look what I did today to celebrate our learning in CKLA. Look what I did. And if you go on to Facebook or Twitter, teachers are sharing all the fun things that they're able to do to kind of make these themes come alive. So that was definitely a concern that I had, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much the students really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed teaching it.
Laura, you should pull up that text message you just got from we were in while I'm telling my story. So my daughter's in 2nd grade, and I will speak more about her friends. And when they come over, they're like, what unit's next? Like, they just get really, really excited about it. I think the kids actually catch on more than the adults. We as adults come in with like, are they really gonna like this? It seems a little bit like, but they really bring the joy out of it. I will say, like you were saying, like my daughter, she's 2nd grade, insects was one of the units, and we were just kind of talking about like, what's your favorite? What didn't you like? She's like, I'm glad insects was over, but you know, Mom, it wasn't that long. So that it kind of goes into like, you will have kids that really love a unit, and you will have kids that will just be like, yeah, that wasn't for me, but we're still just learning the language arts objective. So just for her to realize like, it wasn't that long, like, you know, kind of goes into that whole 3-week approach. God, Lord, this is great.
So I was at a district just last Thursday, walking around with the superintendent and visiting with some of the principals, and she sent me the message when I got home. She texted, you can tell the CKLA ladies, that's what teachers call us, because we're just the two CKLA moms that go around PA. That knowledge is obviously working, because I just had 3 kids in my office for a discipline issue on the bus, 2 of them fighting over the same friend. I'm in the middle talking to them about it and having a restorative conversation, and the 2nd graders go, this is just like the War of 1812. I'm Great Britain and she's France. We're fighting over her and she's USA.
I'd say that in 2nd grade.
This, I don't want to be involved. So that's kind of the stuff that the kids do that make, I don't know, it takes you back to thinking like learning new things can be fun, and they get really excited about it. I also wanted to talk back about the choice. So don't forget, one of the biggest changes from 2nd edition to 3rd edition is that your district will be able to choose topics. So if ancient civilizations is not a topic that you feel like you want is what's best for your 1st graders or 2nd graders or 3rd graders, you can choose another topic. That's something that that is different from 2nd edition. That didn't exist before, but that does exist this year.
All right, so I have one more question for you. I had said the 4th grade quite a bit, but I had also had picked up one of the 1st grade. I believe it's 1st grade. It's a fable book. Have either of you read this or have taught it?
Sorry, I can't see which one it is.
It just says fables on it. It has a big fox.
It's grade 1.
It's
It
grade
tells
1.
you on the back there.
Is that the decodable?
I don't know.
Grade 1, skills 3. It's on the back there.
Big book, skills, lesson 3, fables.
Does it have like a green or the fox on it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so are you aware of the book? Have you read it?
Yes. I have read that too. I didn't read it I read it as a parent. I haven't read it as a teacher, because I taught 2nd grade and 5th grade.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it's like King Log and King Crane.
yes, that's the right book. Well, I had gone through the book and I had read the whole book. And I know that it's labeled fables, but according to what a fable is, typically it has a moral story at the end of each fable. And as I read through these, there isn't one story in here that lists out any kind of moral, takeaway from the story. Some of what I came across, in all honesty, is what I would refer to as somewhat disturbing. And I just want to know, this is one book. How are teachers supposed to know which books might have something they feel is appropriate, something that they feel is not appropriate? But I'll show you exactly what I'm referring to. So I don't know if you can see this. This one's called The Bag of Coins. But in the beginning, it says that there were 2 men. And that's one of them there. But on the other side, this is the other one. And I don't know if you can see that, but I don't really consider that a man. And as you go through this little story, the pictures become a lot more dark. And I'm just honestly asking how a company could promote a 1st grade read aloud, because I think that's what this is designed for. I'm assuming the teacher is going to read this to students, show them the pictures, and then ask questions. But if it's fables and you're going to ask the moral of the story, I can't even pick out the moral of any of those stories. They were nothing less than bizarre. And they were very inappropriate. That would be my best word to sum them up. So my concern and my question would be, you said we could swap out different material. How are we guaranteed that what it is that you're going to send us in the books, that we may choose some and some we don't care for, are going to be appropriate for all students?
We have a choice units brochure that I can send that you would then be able to select which units you would prefer for your district.
Would you actually send the books? Or
All of the decodable readers I have sent, they're in the stadium kits that look kind of like this, but I can send you more if you need more copies.
Okay.
And also the demo access, that you can access everything digitally.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Hi. How are you? So I'll be honest, there's things that I like the concept, but there's other things that I have concerns. So really didn't know what I wanted to look at, so Dr. Ulmer was gracious enough to give me 2 giant totes of like a plethora of grades, and mostly I looked at the 1st grade and the 2nd grade. And the teacher guides, I looked at them and I just kind of thought, unless you're actually going to be using them, you're not going to really know if this is going to work for a teacher or not. Like it's one of those things, kind of like, when you buy one of those planners, until you actually start using it, you don't know if like that was the planner you should have got. So, so when I went through, I actually started looking up like how teachers feel about using the teacher's guides. And when I did, I was looking for pros and cons. But then when I went through, there's a lot of information. And I thought that if I went to your website, that it would be a little biased. So I was looking for, more information. But my biggest concern to start is I can't actually say the word, not because I can't pronounce it, just because it's a 4-letter foul word that was found in a program by a student, and it was brought to the teacher's attention, and I don't even understand how it's used in a sentence. And if this got missed in your curriculum, I'm concerned about what else got missed. And it's, are you aware of anything like that happening? Unless I say I'm not going to say the word. It sounds like duck.
No.
Okay, so I'll pass it down. Here, I did a copy for everybody.
Yeah,
So
can you give that to me and I can pass it along? to
Yes,
them?
absolutely.
That way they
So
can respond to it.
that's my first concern. Okay. So a couple other things like Michelle was talking about was the spelling words, and I looked at the spelling tree. There's a spelling tree that is used. And the spelling tree, it's like 4 words, and you match up the 2 words that look alike, and, that's the spelling. And I just thought for that, what is that? That's second grade that does the spelling tree?
First and second grade.
Okay, first and second do the spelling tree. To me, that wasn't spelling. I remember spelling. I remember sitting on the bench at recess because I had to write my spelling words. Anyways, so that and is there a daily independent reading in K through 4, or is it all audible? Or is it mostly audible? Like somebody reads it to you, or you listen to it.
So go back to the spelling tree, and then I'll answer the reading
Okay.
question.
Okay.
The spelling tree, the point of the spelling tree is each trunk has a sound on it, like ow.
Right.
Right? And then the branches are the different ways that they spell those. So maybe it's OU or OW, and you match those words. So it's being connected to that sound again. So kids are learning shout is spelled with OU, crowd is spelled with an OW. So it serves as kind of a review and just really going through connecting that sound and spelling, which is the approach within CKLA. This approach to spelling in CKLA is not the way I learned it at all. Also, it's not that memorization or writing all these things. So it is very much connected to the sound, which is in the whole approach of what everything we do within CKLA. It does feel really different. But as far as reading, kids are reading every day. There is not a set time. Some days they are reading more than others. But kids are actually reading every day.
Independently.
And so most portion for K2, that's where they'll use the decodable readers, where they have the books in their hands. And then the knowledge, that's when they are listening. That's the audible approach where they'll listen to the read aloud through the teacher.
Okay. There's writing practice, but it's not, is it everyday writing practices?
Yes.
Yeah, the writing approach, again, feels different. They are actually writing so much, like I had mentioned, it may be actually the reading component, but they're working on writing skills like expanding sentences or combining sentences. But then in the writing component of it, maybe we're working on a writing piece. So writing happens so much more than just in that writing part of it. That's at first glance, it's really hard to see these things by just looking at teacher guides. So I really appreciate the questions.
Okay. The other thing is kind of touches on what Michelle was talking about appropriate wording for the age group. So this is a second grade, and it's Warhawks. And I'm just concerned, second graders, why are they learning the term Warhawks? It seems a little aggressive. when we have bullying and, we're trying to try not to be so aggressive, and it just comes off so aggressive, but also in the actual use, well, for war hawk in the literature, it says these people are called war hawks, and this is about the War of 1812, I think that you just mentioned. So this is our history. So, so the people are called war hawks, and they made loud, angry speeches that they complained about impressment. How many? I don't know how. Can anybody? Like, we have teachers, so I'm sure they can give me the definition of impressment. But I don't know how many second graders are going to give me that definition of impressment. That's a tough one, I thought. And then also in Warhawks, they discuss dueling, like Aaron Burr. I mean, that's not the example, but we're going to talk about like a way of, what a duel is. Henry Clay had a hot temper. I mean, it just starts off like that and just goes into a duel. And that's second grade. And then this is first grade. And this is Martez. And Martez is a little boy, Martez likes pork chops, Kay says. And this is a conversation, with the parent and child at the kitchen table. And Martez likes pork chops, Kay says, but hates coleslaw. After a bit, she adds, Martez is the fastest kid in the playground. Martez, says Kay's dad. Who is this Martez? He's a kid from school. Is Martez in your class? Asked Kay's mom. Kay nods. What sort of name is Martez? Okay, right there we're stereotyping. And I just, there's more to it, but that's just kind of how I see that. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's first grade. And and we're a small community. So, this isn't personal. This is what we're going to instill in our community. Now, these are books I received that I looked at, and here is King Alfred. So, the ruling faction is viewed as a hog or a pig, and he sometimes wears a pink dress with flowers. So, kids' book, this is second grade, right? Sir Gus. So Sir Gus is with these other knights, and they go on this quest. And I call it a quest. I don't know they don't call it that in the book, but it's basically they're off to kill this red devil. There's a red devil over here. And Sir Gus is the one that gets nominated to burn him out of his cave. And actually the picture looks like they're burning him. And it's a red devil. It's a red devil. Here's the book if you want to pass it down. So then after that, we're going to celebrate the eviction. But Sir Gus does not seem to appear that he's thrilled about it at first until he meets his group of friends, and then they celebrate it. And then we go to King Albert again, and it looks like it's on a tapestry kind of looking thing. And I'm looking at it, and I see symbolism. And there's hands, one eye, just weird. But the thing that gets me that I saw first was the Facebook thumbs up. And that was my first thought. And then I go to the back to Jules Zuckerberg, the illustrator. And I looked up Jules Zuckerberg. And the Isabella Hetrick. And creative individuals. But it just made me, I don't know if it's any kind of relation, but, social media is a problem, and I think there's a lot of bullying on social media, and to have a thumbs up was that. The other book that, I'm almost done. The other book is Bedtime Tales. I don't know why we're telling bedtime tales in a second grade? Like, bedtime tales. And in the picture, again, it's odd placement of a girl. I mean, it's a dad, but it's just an odd placement. So I went through and, my dad read stories to me when I was a kid. So did my mom and my aunt, my grandparents. But there's a lot of pictures of in bed. Here he's carrying his child who's big enough to walk on her own to the destination. I don't know why he's carrying her like that. So that's just, we don't carry large children, that's not normal. And then another picture in bed. So I just didn't understand, I didn't think it was necessary to discuss bedtime at school and a little girl sitting on a strange dad. And then last, so I looked up CKLA, which is Core Knowledge Language Arts. And so I went down through who's the publisher, what Amplify, who owns them, who owned them. And when you get down to the bottom of this, CKLA is an independent nonprofit educational foundation founded by E.D. Hurst Jr. So I don't know who that was, so I looked him up. And because everybody kept telling me to look up Rupert Murdoch, which he's a strange fellow too. But I found this gentleman more interesting because he's the founder and he's an American educator, a theorist of education. So I looked up the definition of the theorist of an education, So the educational theorist creates abstract ideas and framework about how learning occurs, explaining their own ideas. And when you look further, Ed Hurst, his biggest influence is a gentleman named Antonio Gramsci, Gramsci, who's a Marxist philosopher. So he wrote books on Marxist philosophy, political theory, science, and history. And I just think that a curriculum that is based on Marxism was the nail for me. I have other information. I don't think it's going to make a difference, and I don't want to drag it out. So that's all. That's all I have. Thank you for my time. I yield.
Other questions? Thank you both for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Even though we're not finishing up communications or the superintendent's report just yet, I had a couple things I just wanted to address, but it wasn't questions for the representatives. And I didn't know if any of the board members, was just going to give an opportunity at the moment. Does any board member want to discuss anything that was talked about thus so far, whether it was from what they presented or anything that you would like to comment on?
we have to think about our children and what we're going to put in front of them, and whether we want it as a community or we don't want it as a community. That's kind of where I was in saying some of the things, and you said, well, you have choices. Well, we don't know those choices. I'm not blindly saying, going in to say, oh, well, these choices could be worse than what I already saw.
Well, I don't disagree with you. After reading the Fables book, I'm sorry, I was appalled by that. I wouldn't even get that out of our library, at the local library, and read that. It had absolutely zero moral truths to any of them. I won't open it up and show you, but I'm sure that if anybody really wanted to see it, there's everything from demonic figures to you name it that is in there. And this is a first grade read aloud. I just don't have words. I mean,
One of the instructions on one of the fable ones, which I think it has to do with the Greek mythology, and the thing, you're to continually remind the kids that this is fiction. You shouldn't have to, if you have to remind them at that level that it's fiction, then we have a problem, because people are taking it not as fiction. Kids are.
well, I would agree with you, because I think at that stage of the game, I mean, what is it that we want to see produced in the hearts and minds of our students? What kind of fruit do we want to see? If we have to remind them what truth is, what the difference is between fiction and nonfiction as we're teaching and going along, I think we're making things very difficult and complicated. This should be simplistic, in my mind. You know, I went through some of the other stuff, and going back to the 4th grade, even though I did not have questions for them, what I personally, that this is just from my own observations, but these are some of the concerns I have from that particular book. There is inappropriate things in it. It's the best I can describe it. It's all animated. So if you, and in a lot of the illustrations, these people look angry. There's hardly anybody happy at all in the book, which I just found it a little disturbing. One of the other books I read in the 4th grade, I'm pretty sure it was 4th grade, was about and I have it here, it's called Patricia's Vision. I don't know exactly, because I want the board to be aware of this. This is why I'm speaking, because I personally went through it, and even though it's my own opinion and my own observations, I went through the book, and it talks about it talks about a woman who is underprivileged. It's all about race, and she becomes an ophthalmologist, an optometrist. She's stuck in she's put in a basement for her job, where all the other men are on the first level floor with great offices. And the first thing I thought to myself, are we serious? I mean, we have to be culturally relevant now. If I had to approve $200,000 to spend on this particular curriculum, what really I think it comes down to is I feel really bad that the pool of curriculum that we have to choose from is subpar. I think we can do a lot better than this. I agree with you, Mrs. Thomas, that having to constantly explain to children the difference between fiction and nonfiction, because a lot of what you're going to see in these books, it's all animated. I didn't even see in the history book where there's actual pictures of actual history. There's, you know, if you're
Just
talking
all
about
illustrations.
Yeah, if you're talking about the War of 1812, it's just a bunch of cartoon soldiers and people, like I said, who are very angry mostly throughout the book. So, and these were just a few that I personally had viewed. I want to be able to approve the very best language arts curriculum that we can possibly offer, but I am very concerned. I don't believe that this is something I personally can stand behind.
I just have one thing I wanted to mention. Anything that I say has no reflection on how I see our teachers in the district. This is just what I found. For grade 5, this is a printout. It's called Amplify CKLA, DEI, and Social Justice Guide. And it says the following guide offers an overview of the many ways that the Amplify CKLA program supports students' understanding of issues related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. And it goes throughout the guide. This is just for grade 5 because this is all that I could find. Much of the material, even recently, has been removed from the internet, and I can't access it. But this gives the teachers a guide on how to teach the very things. And this is a political platform. Prior to 2024, the DEI was a political platform. And I'm very much for keeping politics out of the school districts. But this is a political platform. As we know that after 2024, these things have changed as far as DEI and mandates. That's all I have.
I have something to say. I just want to say that, the time the teachers put in to look at all this and to review it, and not to think that, it's easy to do that. I actually talked to a DEI ex-employee, since they don't have a job anymore, and she gave rave reviews on this program, like how wonderful it is and how successful it is. And that is not what I found. I really didn't find that. And I think that the school district and teachers deserve better tools and a better curriculum that suited for them, that they're going to enjoy and that they're going to enjoy with the students. So that's where I come from. One of the things I didn't share is one of the Rata something. Do you know, did anybody look at the one book? It was Rata something. It was like a whole, it was in that K through 4, but it's Rata something. It's this, and they chose a rat, not a mouse, but it's a rat that goes through all the different things for them to learn, like the different sciences of waterways and that kind of stuff. The symbolism for a rat, though, in literature for I thought of a comic book, and it's called Rats, and it's these rats, and it portrays World War II, and it's the rats against the mice, and the rats were the Jews. Now, for some reason, and this just reminded me of that comic book so much, to have a rat that narrates this whole thing, because what's a rat? A rat represents the plague. It represents the kind of darkness in the world that people try to ignore, and humans generally try to ignore. So let's teach these small children, a rat's point of view, and to, live in the world as a rat. And that, there's so much symbolism in those books, and they're dark. And I don't want anybody to think that I looked at this lightly, or I didn't go through books, because, Dr. Elmer, how many books did you give me?
A lot.
A lot. And I did review and go through all of them. So, again, I think that our teachers deserve a better curriculum as much as our district. Thank you. I yield.
So I'm going to say something. First off, thank you to the teachers for taking their time to review this curriculum. I know you started out with multiple curriculums, and this is kind of how it was narrowed down. Secondly, I want to thank the presenters for their time. And thirdly, I wish that we could have had this much conversation when it came to closing a school that we are over a curriculum.
Anything else? I'll move on to Mr. Enders to review the 25-26 budget. While he's getting that pulled up, you should have two pieces of paper at your seat that represent attachment to the agenda. You do have a colored copy of the presentation that Mr. Enders is going to put up on the screen.
Okay, so we have several items to look at this evening. I'm going to start off with our standard presentation that we do at this point in time every year. So this is the 25-26 budget. This is a graphical representation of 25 years of history with the budget. Currently, the budget sits where I provided it to you at the last board meeting. Budget revenue is just over $48.8 million. Budgeted expenditures is just short of $49.2 million. The proposed budget that is on the agenda tonight for approval shows a budget deficit of $362,719. I know I told you at the last meeting it was about $147,000. I will get to explaining what that difference is in a minute. But on the proposed budget that is on the agenda this evening, those are the numbers that are being presented.
So it's different than the one-page thing you gave us last time? Is that
Yes,
what
yes.
Did we get a new one?
No,
Okay, all
no.
right.
The numbers, that's what, this presentation is based on those numbers.
Okay.
Sorry. Again, graphical representation of our fund balance, and historical representation of the fund balance. We do have a new committed fund balance for technology purposes. And future technology purchases. You just approved a purchase of iPads at the last board meeting. We are utilizing that fund balance to make those purchases. Revenue by source, very similar to what it has been in years past. 56% for state sources and 42% from local sources and just over 1% from federal sources. This is graphical representation of historical real estate tax status. Since 2020, 2021, we have done 4 years of rebalanced. 2 years in there, we raised taxes 25% of the index. One of those years was last year when Clinton County went up 1.83% and Lycoming County went up 1.79%. The 1.83% was 25% of 7.3%, which was the index. This year, your index is at 5.5%. At the very end of this presentation, we will be providing a recommendation of where we want to go with real estate taxes for 25-26. This shows changes in the state revenues within the budget. Right now, the budget is sitting at the governor's proposal. It does show a decrease in basic ed funding. That's because of how the final state budget landed for 24-25. Money was pulled out of basic ed funding and put into other locations, i.e. the Ready to Learn Block Grant, special education. You will see, and I'll bring it up at a later slide, an increase in our debt service subsidy. That's just a calculated increase based on our payments. I think this is Mr. Schweitzer's favorite slide. You've asked me for this ever since I've started. This is a graphical representation of our expenditures by what we call object code, which is kind of the general area of the expense. Salaries and benefits is consistent. It's been consistent, sitting around 70%. This year, it's at 67% of the budget. This is graphical representation of expenditures by function. This shows more the general area of where you're spending your money, i.e. instructional, support, or the 12%, your other financing uses is typically your bond payments. So you're at 57% for instructional services. Again, that's been status quo where we've been for the past couple of years. Finally, this is expansion of our debt service. You'll see in 24-25 a double asterisk there. We did do a bond issue this year. This shows the increase in the debt with that new bond issue and charts out our annual payment till the bonds are all paid off in the end of 2040. Same data, just in a bar chart. Again, if you notice in 24-25, that uptick, that is the new bond issue that was done about a month or two ago now. This is just a standard data point we calculate every year. This shows our borrowing capacity. We are just shy of $81.2 million. We have no intentions of looking to garner that debt.
So that's how much they say we can afford?
We could borrow, not forward, borrow. Debt service subsidy, I think in here it's important to note that this does end in 2030 when the debt prior to this year's was set to expire. That is because all the prior debt was under the old PDE Plan-Con system, and that did have a PDE subsidy. The new debt that was issued this year, as you know, does not have a subsidy payment. So the subsidy will end at 2030. This has been a line graph that's been in here since I've started, showing historical data, 43 years of data for the for PSERS. We did have a slight uptick this year. We went from 33.9 to 34%. Here's historical numbers of what each one of those recents were. The projected amounts are amounts provided by PSERS. I will tell you, I didn't look, but I think last year they were projecting the 25-26 rate to be about 34.7, so it did come in below what it was projected to be.
When do you get that, Ben, in relationship to?
This always comes with when we get our certified PSERS rate, which is in December.
December, okay, thanks.
This is our charter school historical data and projected for next year. One important piece I wanted to bring up to the board is this subsidy column. Charter school subsidy ended in 2010, 2011. If you remember last year, the governor's proposal proposed a flat tuition rate statewide for the entire district, or for the entire Commonwealth. That was not part of the final 24-25 state budget. Instead, they added a new subsidy line item for charter schools. So down here in 24-25, you'll see that's our subsidy for charter schools. It's not based on anything I provide them. So it's an allotment of money. I have projected it to be flat funded for 25-26. Can't tell you for sure if that's accurate or not. We do not have a projection amount in there. There is another proposal for a statewide tuition rate. It is not in our budget for 25-26. That's about the only thing in the state budget that's not in this budget. So I wasn't comfortable with how it turned out last year, putting it into the 25-26 budget. You'll notice we are projecting $3.975 million of charter school expenditures for next year. Sugar Valley is just over 1.2 million, and cyber schools are just over 2.7 million. Right now, tuition rates for next year are projected to be over $14,000 per student for regular ed per year. For special ed, it'd be over $31,500 for Sugar Valley per student per year, and over $28,700 for special ed cyber rate per student per year. Those rates are between 5.65% and 5.75% higher than what they are this year. In our budget, a piece of this 3.975 is sitting up in their categories, and a piece of it is sitting in the contingency line item as it's been for several years now. Again, graphical representation of the information we just looked at. Here you'll see this light tan bar that represents the subsidy amount that we just discussed. Finally, this is the last graph in here, our projected enrollment. Right now, we are projected to be under 2,000 students next year based on enrollment at the beginning of April. Interestingly enough, when we looked at it last year, we projected exactly what we ended up with our 10-1 count of 2,089 students. Found that really weird. That's the last of the formal presentation. Joe, I'm going to end this. So going back to the document, the one-page document I provided to you.
Ben, can I ask a question first before you go that?
Sure.
On your last page there, why so low on the elementary? I mean, what's projecting that to be that much lower?
Right now, it would be our kindergarten enrollment.
Where we're at this point in time. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I kind of found it odd, because we were low last year at this point in time, and for us to end our 10-1 count, which you know is our official enrollment account, for it to be exactly where we projected it at this point, for October 1st to be where we projected
right
at April, I found it odd. So the numbers, the fluctuation when I looked at it was really at the middle school level. I was really expecting it to be at the high school level, but high school was kind of the same. It was the elementary was slightly higher, but middle school was slightly lower. But in the end, it was exactly where we.
So are we done with kindergarten registration?
No, but we are behind again this year where we were last year. Remember,
At the same time.
was also
Okay.
low.
Back to my one-page sheet and the $362,000 deficit versus the 147. So there are 4 additional attritional savings that we will garner once we have either a resignation or retirement. 3 of them are in the paraprofessionals, and 1 is in the custodial staff. That projected savings from those 4 staff members are just over $215,000, which is how we're projecting a deficit of $147,000. I don't, Dr. Ulmer and I discussed this, and I said, I'm not comfortable just taking people out of the budget
Until they come out.
until they come out. Yeah, thank you. So I said I wanted to figure, that was how we figured out who we were going to represent. that
And when you
savings.
use that number, you're considering a replacement or not necessarily?
No, they would not be replacements. Remember, we said we would take them as people left, but we're not furloughing
Oh, this has to still,
people.
okay, all right,
Yes.
all right.
Revenue-wise, I wanted to bring up several points to you. Real estate taxes currently sitting in the budget is exactly the same dollar amount as it was in 24-25. Give me a few minutes, I'm gonna get to where we're gonna go with those. Earned income tax, I'm showing us a slight uptick of 300,000. We're gonna project out budget $5.1 million. We do have a new,
Are we on the same page?
I'm sorry, I'm on the revenue from last presentation.
Oh, okay, then we don't have that in front of, I mean, I have it in my book, so.
So, we do have a new tax collector for earned income tax, and I only have 3 months of data to go by, but I believe we will probably end up better than 5.1, but I felt comfortable going to 5.1. Lastly, on local revenue, I have increased interest earnings. We've been doing a really good job with our interest earnings. I added an additional about $140,000 of interest for next year's budget. I've already talked about the state budget. The last piece of the revenue side I wanted to talk about was the federal. We have set the federal budget at the current 24-25 final allocations. Now I'm on to our large legal page. And this is the standard document we look at as regarding real estate taxes. As I said, the index is 5.5%. I traditionally provide you data on no tax increase to each county individually, what they would be at rebalanced, at 25% of the index, 50% of the index, 75% of the index, and at the full index. Dr. Ulmer and I have discussed this. We are recommending we do not increase real estate taxes. We rebalance real estate taxes. That will have an impact on the budget. It will raise revenue just over $34,000. Clinton County's millage rate is the one that is rebalanced by the state this year. The rebalance is done by the state. It's a process by which it looks at our current year millage rates and says this is what they kind of should have been and rebalances them. So with the rebalance, Clinton County would increase 14.0613 over, which is 0.0549 increase in millage rates over this year. Lycoming counties would decrease to 18.6687. That is a 0.049 millage rate decrease for Lycoming County. In the terms of dollars, for every $100,000 of assessed value, Clinton County would go up $5.49. For every $100,000 for Lycoming County, it would go down $4.91. Please keep in mind right now, these millage rates and those changes don't take into consideration any increase in the homestead farmstead allocation. So
You
there's
left
a
it, you left
potential.
it flat at this point.
Yes, I haven't
Okay.
touched that. I don't get that until May 1st.
So your recommendation is the bold print?
Our recommendation is bold to rebalance the millage rates.
And that has to be decided when?
we will put it on the agenda at the next board meeting.
Okay.
Questions for Mr. Enders?
Looking at your presentation and knowing the increase in loan payments over the next 3 years, I believe is what I saw. Where are you recommending that money is going to come from?
So we had an increase this year in our loan payments, and through the savings that were garnered, we were able to fund those increase in the payments. If I remember correctly, the payment increase for next year, I have to go back and look at Jamie Doyle's presentation. It wasn't that much different from this year's increase. So really, the increase is already built into this year's budget. Just because I can tell which page you're looking at.
That one.
Please keep in mind, this is where I don't really care for this presentation. Jamie presented to you. If you're looking at the debt service payments, which is Mrs. Calhoun is looking at, look at it alongside the debt service subsidy, because if you remember our old schedule before the current bond issue, our payment was relatively flat at $2.5 million. What happened was there were years, and we actually experienced it in 25, 26, where your debt payment kind of jumps, but the revenue also jumps because of the subsidy. So you can see that when you go over and look at the subsidy. In 26, 27, we're projected to get just shy of $1.2 million of subsidy, and our payments projected to go to $4.1 million. So this increase offsets this increase.
I also have another question then. With the closure and the amount that was to be saved, I know there's 215,000 sitting here still, but I believe it was talked about putting that in a separate account. And going through these line items, I did not see anywhere that took place
I
to
don't,
keep track of those monies.
well, I don't recall ever discussing putting in a separate account. And what would you, a separate account being a separate bank account, or
Even if it wasn't account, maybe a line item, so that at least for the first year or two, that we could see where that money went, where it was going, you know what I mean? Because
Like tracking, not necessarily an
Right.
account, but I think she's asking for it to be tracked.
right.
Okay.
Is that something that you could show in
Yeah.
the future? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Enders? I'm going to briefly recognize Mrs. Kathy Eisner. She is here tonight to discuss some updates with, you can go ahead and come to the podium, so that we can all hear through the mic, with our band and the work that they have been doing while she's coming to the podium. I do have job descriptions on the agenda tonight. Those are just for presentation. We continue to work through job descriptions. If you see anything on those that sticks out to you and what you want me to change before we vote on them, please let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to recognize Kathy Eisner.
Thank you. The student board member did a great job kind of giving you an overall, but I wanted to come in person and invite each and every one of you tomorrow night, 6 p.m., free of charge. The indoor ensemble will be performing at the high school, their send-off show. And if you don't know what the indoor ensemble is It is the jazz band, which is made up of high school and 8th graders, that over half of them are brand new this year, and they have been phenomenal. Watching these kids grow and learn, just wonderful. And the indoor guard team, as she said, they have been undefeated. Unfortunately, till yesterday, they came in second by 0.37 points. But they're in first place going to Wildwood, which they leave for on Wednesday, so we're looking for good things. But please come out, see these great group of kids. Of the indoor guard, 7 of them are brand new. So for them to be where they are, this program is only 9 years old. Our oldest was on the first team, so to have watch it grow, I'm just really excited for them. They had a home show. Then I know an email was sent out to everyone. There was little to no response back, so I wanted to come in person and invite you. As I said about the jazz team, they're doing great. The other things that are been going on this year is Ray of Lights, which represents and supports the play that happened in the fall and the musical that happened a few weeks ago. There were over 13 schools from the area that will be showcasing their talents. It is at the Community Arts Center. Tickets go on sale on May 2nd. Please come support that program. Other things going on is the Spring Chorus Concert. That is May 8th. That is going to be the high school and the middle school, free of charge. May 16th, we're going to be having this 2nd annual Modern Band Concert. This is really great. These aren't all band kids. These are kids who play guitar, play drums, who are just getting together to, as they say, jam. There are kids from other schools or outside schools that are coming to that. It is loud, but it's really great to see. And there's been a few teachers last year who took part. I'm hoping we see some this year. Did you get to see their different personalities? May 17th, we are starting to celebrate the 100th anniversary of music in the Jersey Shore School District. At this time, we have someone from every family of the past band directors will be present. Some of them will be directing, some of them will be playing. We're trying to get the word out. If you or anyone you know was a member of the band, please have them reach out to Mr. Lahr. We would love to have them either play along or just come and see it. Right now we have about 40 people signed up of all ages, so I can't wait to see the talent and what some of these people can do. The other thing she did mention was the Hershey in the Parks. And this was a special invitation put out to Jersey Shore for this program because of the 100th anniversary. We're struggling a little bit right now on this because it was such a late invitation for the school and the kids that the elementary kids are having a hard time fundraising. So the boosters, we are doing lots of things to try and help these kids, plus paying the transportation for Hershey and paying for the transportation to Wildwood. There's a lot of great things happening that these kids are having an opportunity that have not had in the past. I'm hoping the future only gets better with what's coming down the road. I also just kind of wanted to give a shout out. This year there's 8 seniors in the music program. All 8 are going to college or to a trade school. 4 of them are going on academic scholarships, either full or partial, which I think is phenomenal. Because out of those 4, 3 of them have part-time jobs on top of it. Everything else they're doing. So these are great kids that are not getting the recognition they need or deserve. So I'm just asking you to come out and support them over the next few months. There's also the Memorial Day program, which, again, anyone from the community that has played an instrument is welcome to join. That is a great program to watch. So I just, like I said, tomorrow night it's free. It'll take about half hour of your evening to see a great bunch of kids perform.
Thank you for your time, Mrs. Eisner. We appreciate it. Everything for me.
Okay, next we will have courtesy of the floor. Mrs. Eisner, I know that you had signed up, but obviously, yes, Dr. Omar, but thank you very much for your information and the invitation. Thank you. Mrs. Beerley.
I'm still gobsmacked by that second half of that curriculum discussion. I'm
Okay.
going to sit here and make you all happy and not say anything.
All right, we will move on to personnel. Items to approve. A through D. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? You gotta spell it. Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Under curriculum and instruction, item to approve, letter A. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns?
Can I ask a question about the presentation we had about the CO?
The CKLA.
Yes. So I was just,
At the, well, hang on to that thought.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Yeah. We're going to definitely give you your time to ask that question.
Okay.
It's just that since it's under this and we're voting on it, if you can just wait till the end, I'll open it up for anybody else that wants to discuss this presentation tonight.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks.
no problem. You're welcome. Okay. So I know I had a first and a second. Okay. Any questions or concerns on item A? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Under buildings and grounds, items to approve, letter A and B. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns?
Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks. I was just wondering if we could get, do an overview of the scope of work for what we're looking at here. So, from what I've seen in the document, we're gonna try to divide Salisbury into 4 segments, is that correct?
Oh, it was 5.
Well, he's saying 4, there would be 4 plus the original.
It says 4 on the,
All right.
that's why, all right. So, can you give me an idea of how that's gonna be laid out or not at this point?
So we have a draft that we worked through, we gave, Mr. Wall and I gave to the surveyor. But it's not final, and we didn't attach it here because after he surveys the exterior property boundaries, it could adjust where we put those lines. So we didn't put it out on purpose because it might not be the final version. But it's essentially the school, the ball fields with property around the ball fields, and other lots that may be accessible behind the school from another road.
All right. That's what I was wondering. Thanks.
So this is including the 3 tasks that we're allowing Nate to complete. Is that correct? Is that what the scope of service actually
Yes.
is? Okay. So he's doing the tractament survey, subdivision planning, and It looks like set pins and mark lines.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Under Finance, items to approve, A through E. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
A second.
Any questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Under Miscellaneous, items to approve, A through C. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns?
I have a question about policy 006. That policy is tied to Robert's rules, right? It's,
Informed by, I think it says somewhere in there, or maybe in a different policy that we subscribe to Robert's rules.
is the guidance. So, Robert's rules says that you're supposed to have old business, correct?
Robert's rules says you should identify areas.
But the policy then says that we want to take that out and just, are we, I guess is, the gist is, are we just renaming it so that it is something not as hard-lined as the old business? So, or is it in addition to, like, I guess I'm kind of confused as to, like, if we can actually eliminate that agenda item.
So the intent is to kind of give a more nebulous area for you to discuss topics that you have been discussing in the past, but haven't voted on the agenda. Old business is intended for, at least the way Robert's Rules is written, is for you to pull out items that you may have tabled in a prior meeting and put them in the old business section for voting out. So that's for voting items that were old business that got tabled to the next meeting. So you traditionally, as a board, have never used old business that way. You actually just take tabled items and you carry them forward to the next meeting and put it into whichever bucket it's sitting in, whether it's finance, buildings and grounds, curriculum. And you're going to continue to do that, is my understanding. And you will have this new kind of more open, unfinished business agenda item for you to either add items upon presentation to the board president, or if it's an old discussion item that maybe didn't land there, but is entertained by the president for discussion, similar to like what I think we're going to do tonight, is Mr. Allen had some more questions about the curriculum piece for ELA, and you're going to discuss that in that unfinished business realm of the agenda.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Again, Robert's Rules is used as guidance. You get to make your own policies, and they can contradict Robert's Rules whenever it's appropriate based on your decision.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. All right, so before there's courtesy of the floor to the public, now would be a good time. I will let Mr. Allen ask the question or questions you may have pertaining to the presentation from the CKLA representatives.
All right, I was just wondering if we could have a perspective from the faculty to talk about a couple of these questions that I have. Because like, I don't know exactly, like how many weeks do we typically spend on a unit in our, in our current curriculum? That's one thing I don't know for sure how we do that here. Is there leeway, and from their perspective, is there leeway on the topic? So, I mean, they've said there's different modules or different things that you can choose from, but I was just curious as to, did the faculty see that when they looked at this, this
Yeah,
product?
I would say yes, we've discussed the ability to pick and choose units and substitute, like, but we know it has to be done up front. For, like, we can't buy both and you pick unit 1A and I pick unit 1B. We're gonna purchase one of those units. That's how that works.
Okay. Let's see. I was trying to type these down as we were talking, but I guess I'm kind of curious as to how the teachers will be able to handle this system when it comes to students that can't, that aren't up to the reading level that they should be, or should they, do they need a special class for those students or not? And if so, does that mean we have another faculty that we need to hire to do that kind of stuff?
I would say the answer to that is no. We will have 3.5 reading specialists at JSE next year and one at Avis. And that is typically what we use as a strategy for students who are struggling to read on grade level.
Okay. That was
One of the things that I read, I think it's in the stuff online, and I've read so many things, is that they suggest, like, when you have multiple teachers in the grade level, that you group those kids. Are we looking at that, or we haven't even thought about it?
We haven't had that conversation yet, no.
Okay. So that then they can move at their pace that they're at, some faster, some slower, but then, like, big question is, where does the whole game, the whole ball game end up at the end then?
Right. That was all the questions I had for right now.
Well, I just wanted to clarify your one question. Were you looking for faculty, like, presentation from them, or just through Dr. Ulmer getting your questions answered?
Well, either way will work for me, but, if there's a faculty that wants to talk about it, then I'd be willing to listen to what they have to say.
Okay.
But my takeaway on your biggest question is comparing the flow of what we currently have to this. Is that
Correct.
your biggest question?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I got the question right.
Yep.
Well, that's why I asked the question, how much is the in-service, how long is the in-service? Because this program, not saying it's bad, good, or is a big change. And you're gonna give them one day and they're gonna be ready to go. If I was a teacher, I'd be ready to run the other way. Well, I was a teacher, but not anymore. So that's a misnomer when I said.
Are there any other board members that want to make any comments or have any questions from this presentation tonight? Okay.
I try to find statistics. Who asked the question about statistics? Was that Mary? Oh, that was you. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so I tried to find statistics here and I couldn't find it, but the only thing I could find was the percentage of what type of regions used this core knowledge. And 44% were public schools, 35% are charter schools, 15% are private schools, 39% are urban, 39% are suburban, and 22 are rural. So I think private schools are in the lead. But we're, you know, I don't think it's a fit for our area, like our type of school. So that's all I wanted to add. I tried to find statistics, I couldn't. And it's only because it's hard to find statistics when a program is used in multiple types of classroom, and you know, you have private schools that don't have to take testing. So you're not going to get the same statistic as you're going to get from a public school because they don't have the same resources. That's all I wanted to add.
Anyone else? Okay, then we will move on to courtesy of the floor.
Ray Beerley, Pyatt Township. Okay, I'm a little confused. Maybe somebody can clarify this. We had a presentation on a reading program, a new reading program, correct? This is what that
English language arts.
English language art. Yeah, I'm sorry. Was this something that was evaluated? What did our principals and our reading specialists and reading teachers, did they look at various programs to update what we have currently, and was this what they recommended?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I wasn't clear about that. So thank you for all the hard work that you did in choosing this program, and I trust your judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Beerley.
Bob Pryor, Mifflin Township. Good to see everybody tonight. I just want the board to know I'm really proud of you. I love to see the discussion among the board members tonight with the CKLA series. I think every board member really had some good points. There were excellent observations and questions. This meeting is exactly what the taxpayers expect to see on curriculum and other important issues of concern. So I think it was a very impressive meeting tonight. Smiles versus frowns in books does influence students' minds and attitudes. I hope and expect the CKLA series be denied by this board. I'm tired of indoctrination in this country. Let's get back to the reading books being required, being read by the students with book reports on the content, and then also spelling bees to promote competition among students. I don't know whether this district still has spelling bees or not, but they can actually be fun. And the last student standing gets a little award, a little reward. So I have confidence that this board will not accept the CKLA series because I agree with your concerns very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. All right, I'm going to close courtesy of the floor, and the meeting's adjourned.